All right, welcome back everybody. It's been a long time since I've done any recordings or done any videos or anything. So here we are with the first episode in a long time. I think it's maybe my second episode of Streaker's Swamp. Today, we're going to be getting a little bit out of the video game realm and we're going to go into some politics. Uh, Specifically speaking about um the why that move over there. Huh. All right. Streaker, I've always got mishaps on everything that I do, and I don't generally do too terribly much editing. I try to do these more like live. Unfortunately, I'd love to do this live, but unfortunately, it seems that, you know, 8 out of 10 times my internet speed, my upload speed just inhibits me from doing that. So I'm going to start doing these like this, but they're going to be kind of like live because I won't really do a whole lot of editing. I might if I really screw things up, but other than that, I, you get what you get with Streaker. Um, so like I say, we're gonna be doing talking about a CNN post that I watched earlier on YouTube. I've been watching a lot of politics lately, and it's with the Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly, and she's talking about how to counter President Trump's tariffs. Should have done this probably hours ago. I haven't been really watching uh, what's been going on in the last 5, 6 hours because it's been so long. My OBS was all sorts of jacked up, and it might still be jacked up. So, without further ado, we are going to go into Streaker's stance. We're going to go from Streaker's Swamp to Streaker's stance. That means these are my opinions and the way I think about things. Doesn't mean you need to agree with what I say or do or whatever, but I'm sure there's people out there that are in agreement with me, and I'm just giving my opinions. And we all know opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, but nobody wants to hear from it. But guess what? You're hearing it today from me. And that's just the way it goes with Streaker's stance. But before we get going with that, I do want to give a shout out to a friend of mine that actually is in Ottawa, Ontario. This is right here. This is that roofer chick on Facebook. So you can check her out on Facebook. I'll put a link to her page, her Facebook page, in the description below, so you can check it out. But if you have any roofing needs, feel free to give her a call. Her name is Vanessa. Her company is Guns and Hoses Roofing. And as you can see right there, she's been in business for 7 years. She's been doing roofing quite a bit longer than that. So without further ado, let's kind of step in and see just what they have to say over on the CNN episode that I watched a little earlier. And this is just another thing to prove to everybody that may not think that, I don't watch all different sources of news, and I kind of form my own opinions based off of, a conglomeration of everything. because none of these news sources are always fully accurate. So you just got to kind of take what you think sounds a little bit more truthful and kind of go with it from that standpoint. So let's switch on over to that. And let's see what they have to say. And I'll be jumping in with my opinions here and there, of course.
The president's announcement, set to take place in the White House Rose Garden, is being called Make America Wealthy Again. That's despite warnings from economists virtually across the board that actually reciprocal tariffs against trading partners will make things more expensive for Americans and also make a U.S. recession more likely. Trump says he has finally settled on his tariff plan, though the White House says he's still working through the numbers with his advisors. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt says that whatever the plan of action, the tariffs are, in the administration's view, necessary and long overdue.
And I feel that they are too.
The president will be addressing the decades of unfair trade practices that have ripped our country off and American workers off. It has hollowed out our middle class. It has destroyed our heartland. And the president is focused on reshifting our global economy to ensure that America is once again the manufacturing superpower of the world.
The White House says the tariffs announced tomorrow will take effect immediately. U.S. stocks finished Tuesday sessions mostly higher. Despite these new uncertainties, U.S. Senate Democrats are challenging Trump's sweeping 25% tariffs specifically on Canada. Announced back in February, they're set to hold a vote this week aimed at scrapping the national emergency grounds that underpins Trump's tariffs. They say the president overstated the fentanyl emergency on the northern border in order to give him legal cover for those tariffs.
The president has justified the imposition of these tariffs on, in my view, a made-up emergency. Fentanyl is a real emergency in this country.
I mean, here they go again. It's a made-up emergency. A lot of these emergencies are caused by these gentlemen right here over the years of being in Congress and honestly just not giving a shit other than what goes in their pocket. Now, mind you, do I think that there's probably some extra agendas, which we'll get into a little bit later in this video, on why he used that as an emergency is using this emergency to further a different agenda all at the same time? Why, yes, of course I do. And there's a lot of things that I don't agree on that President Trump has been doing, especially with the Canadian tariffs and stuff like that. But yes, I do all at the same time. There's things that we don't know that the people in charge know. And when they are trying to make things better for the American people, the American middle class, yes, it's the middle class that they're working towards, then there's just things they got to do. Well, let's just continue on.
Let's be clear about that. Fentanyl is a real emergency. But as President Trump's national security advisor, Tulsi Gabbard, testified before Mark's Intel committee last week, the fentanyl emergency is from Mexico and China. It's not from Canada.
President Trump is now demanding that all Senate Republicans vote against the measure and keep the national emergency grounds in place. In a Truth Social post, he said a victory would be, quote, devastating for the Republican Party and for the United States. The measure, however, we should note, is mostly symbolic because it is highly unlikely to be taken up by the Republican-controlled House. Earlier, I spoke to Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly, about the broader trade war, as well as news that the heads of Mexico and Canada discussed tariffs in a phone call today, suggesting the two countries might offer a joint response to Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Have a listen.
Well, we've been working together, the foreign minister of of Mexico and I have been in close contact for many weeks now. It's been more than 90 days that we've been dealing with different executive orders coming out of the White House that are affecting our economies. But it was an introduction call. It was the first time the Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Carney, and President Sheinbaum were talking, and we're both very important trading partners. Mexico is the second biggest trading partner to Canada, but also we're part of the USMCA, this trade agreement that is also so key right now, and that we need to see whether we can continue to work on to keep it strong. And this is certainly a message that we wanted to make sure that the Mexican government heard from their Canadian friends.
As you know, the Prime Minister, Carney, he warned that the old U.S. relationship that Canada had with the U.S. is over, stating, quote, the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner. I wonder, what does that mean exactly? How will the trading relationship change between the U.S. and Canada, but also the defense partnership?
Well, we didn't launch a trade war against the U.S. The U.S. Decided to put 25% tariffs against it.
All right, I need to stop that right there. She states, we didn't launch a trade war against the U.S. I call bullshit right there. The reason being is you got all sorts of different tariffs on our products to protect your industries, but you don't expect other countries to put tariffs back on your products to protect their industries, i.e. the U.S. I understand that Canada actually does give us a lot of their oil at way reduced cost, which is kind of one reason why I'm like, okay, what's up here, President Trump? However, on the other hand, I understand where he's coming from on a lot of other things like this. Who started the trade war? These guys, in my opinion, many, many, many years ago. And all the presidents and stuff prior to this, all the administrations prior to this, have just let it get worse and worse and worse over time to where it's gotten now. So let's continue on, because I've got a little bit more to talk about when she gets to it here.
All our products in their first executive order, then went after us by putting 25% tariffs on our steel and aluminum, then went after us putting 25% on our auto sector, and now we're looking at the
25% on our auto sector, she says. That's a big negatory. That is United States automotive industry that you, Canada, and Mexico have stolen from the United States auto workers. Let's be clear on that. Canada, Mexico, neither one of you sell your own automobiles. These are Ford, these are Chrysler, these are Chevrolet, GM. They're not. You don't have an auto industry, Canada. You don't have an auto industry, Mexico. You're not like Kia. You're not Korea. You're not making your own damn vehicles and then shipping them over here. You're making American vehicles, American corporation vehicles in your country at a reduced rate to the manufacturer, so that they can make a higher profit, which in turn takes our jobs away, our automotive industry. So let's continue on.
Potentially being vulnerable to reciprocal tariffs. Meanwhile, we wanted to make sure that we were sending a clear message that we were retaliating. And at this point, we've put $60 billion worth of tariffs.
So they want to send a clear message that they're retaliating against the U.S. for the U.S. wanting to take back what was theirs in the first place. So they want to retaliate against us for taking back what is ours in the first place. This is the biggest reason why I feel President Trump is placing all these tariffs. Yes, he's using the of course, these are my opinions. Of course, he's using the fentanyl emergency as an excuse to be able to do this. But you know what? It's there. All's fair. He can do that. I don't want to piss off Canada either. You know, but at the same time, you're taking our jobs. The United States auto workers' jobs. So there's that.
Against products in Canada. And also we have $100 billion more of potential counter tariffs against the US, so on American products in Canada. Canada is the biggest client of the US. Jim, you've asked me that question in the past. You know, when you're in business, and I know many people watching us right now are in the business sector, you treat your client, your best client, well. And so our goal is to make sure that we...
Right. So Prime Minister Jolie, why, or not, or whatever you are, again, why are you not treating your best client, the United States of America, well? You're taking our jobs, but yet inhibiting the U.S. from taking your jobs, the ones that you guys have in your industry. You're taking our steel, you're taking our aluminum, you're taking our auto workers. We were always the industrial powerhouse, and over the last, I don't know what, probably three decades, it's just been totally getting whittled away little by little by little by little. Even President Trump in his first term kind of fucked us a little bit with the USMCA agreement that they came up with. But apparently it's gotten worse in the last 4 years that President Biden was in office.
We end this trade war, that we get to a common understanding that this is hurting our Canadians and Americans, their wallets, and nobody's winning from it.
And yes, it's going to hurt both Americans and Canadians in the short term. It definitely will. I'm not having any misconceptions that prices are not going to go up because of tariffs and whatnot. However, in the long term, I might not see this stuff in my, 10, 15 years of life left in me. But my grandkids are certainly going to see the difference, for sure, as long as we continue on down the same path that we're on right now, where we have a America First agenda instead of politicians lining their pockets agenda by just taking any lobbyist cash and putting it in their pocket and then voting the lobbyist way. This country has really become messed up, really messed up because of that. As a matter of fact, lobbyists should be outlawed, in my opinion. You shouldn't have anybody trying to sway politicians' opinions, especially when it comes to kickbacks and money. That should be illegal. But apparently it's not, because they've been doing it for many, many decades, longer than I've been alive.
But at the same time, of course, we want to make sure that we work with the White House. Of course, we want to make sure that we find an off-ramp. Of course, we're willing to have discussions. And that's my goal, working with Marco Rubio. But also, this is the goal of the Prime Minister, talking to the President, and as well the Secretary of Commerce and the Minister of International Trade here in Canada.
But the Prime Minister's words speak to something more lasting here. And it's not just him who's saying this. It's many Canadians themselves, right, who are quite voluntarily stopping buying U.S. products or canceling visits to the U.S. I wonder.
Seeing that right there, that kind of ticks me off. That's like, U.S. saying, you know what, screw it, we're going to take all Canadian whiskeys off of our shelf. Grow the fuck up. We're not boycotting your products over the frickin' tariffs that you have had on us and over all the jobs you've stolen from us. So, grow the fuck up. That's what I have to say about that to Canadians that are doing that. I know that a huge chunk of you do not condone that, but the ones that do condone that, the ones that are doing that, it's just like the extreme liberals in the US. Grow the fuck up. I mean, what's I'm not even going to get into that now. I'll get into other stuff in other videos, but all right. So let's continue on here.
Who will Canada look to be a more reliable trading partner if the U.S. is no longer that reliable?
There's no need to look elsewhere. Just treat us fairly. Treat us fairly. You'll get treated fairly, and everybody will be happy-go-lucky again. It's really that simple. It's not, oh, I'm gonna run off to the EU because of this, that, and everything else.
Reliable partner.
Well, we understand that we're now in an era of protectionism, and our entire country has been built on free trade amongst our provinces, but there's been many barriers to commerce within Canada, and we think that we can really do a better job at supporting ourselves inside our country. We're also looking, of course, at Europe. Canada's the most most European country of all the non-European countries, Jim. We're definitely looking at Japan and South Korea and looking at Asia. We're, of course, looking at Mexico. But fundamentally, Canadians have really good...
And yes, Canada should diversify like that. They shouldn't have all their eggs in one basket, which I feel that they've put most of their eggs into one basket with the United States. So yeah, I totally understand diversifying, but don't try and cut the U.S. out, but do diversify.
Relationship with Americans. We're your best friends, we're your best neighbors, your best allies. And so we want to make sure that, well, we're putting maximum pressure on the Trump administration to make sure that they're backing off on their trade war, that we can find a way to find a solution. But on the security side, we know we need to invest more in our own industry. We need to rely more on our defense sector. We need to create jobs at home. We need to defend our own Arctic. And that's also the job we will be doing. We're now in campaign mode here back home in Canada. So we need to make sure that we have a strong mandate on the part of Canadians to make sure that we're sending also a message to the American administration that we stand up for Canadians.
It sounds like you're leaving the door open to some sort of reconciliation here. Do you have some hope, some optimism that perhaps President Trump will back off some of the worst trade threats? Because that doesn't seem to be the signals coming from the White House.
I'm in charge of diplomacy in Canada. My job is always to make sure that we put maximum pressure, that when I say maximum pressure, that we use all the tools in our toolkit to ultimately have this trade war end. But in the end of the day, we know there's going to be a negotiating table. That's the case in every war, including trade wars. And in that sense, we need to send a clear message now to Canadians, to Americans. And this is my way to make sure that ultimately we get to a good position at the negotiation table. That's why we're keeping our counter tariffs in place. That's why also we're the only country on earth that has put so much retaliatory tariffs on the table. Of course, we're talking with other countries. Of course, we're talking to the
Like I say, retaliatory tariffs. You wouldn't have all these we wouldn't have retaliatory tariffs against Canada if Canada hadn't been doing like the US should have been doing the last 30 or 40 years and protecting our own industry by putting tariffs like they've got on the industries that they are protecting. You know, if we would have been protecting our auto industry, our steel, you know, our mining, you know, I know the Iron Range here in Minnesota has taken a big freaking hit over the last 40 years is when it started going downhill because of all the EPA regulations and stuff, which really hit that area hard. It used to be booming. Now they're just small little towns now. But let's continue on.
EU. Of course, we're talking to Mexico. Of course, we're talking to Japan and South Korea. Because what we're seeing right now is all these different tariffs are affecting ultimately jobs here at home, but also creating inflation across the board in many economies, and first and foremost in the US. And that's my message to Americans watching us right now, is tariffs are
our inflation has absolutely nothing to do with these tariffs at this point in time. Our inflation came from Biden spending, and just printing money, raising the minimum wage levels to the extent that, you know, small businesses, they need to charge more. So if you're making, say, $9 an hour as a minimum wage and it gets raised to $15 an hour as a minimum wage, in all reality, by the time everything gets readjusted, as you can look at by looking at your value meals at McDonald's now, or any of your meals at McDonald's now, things that used to cost, say, $9 for a meal are now $18, $20, $16, $18, $20 at freaking McDonald's. You're better off going to a regular sit-down restaurant, taking the extra 10 minutes and getting 4 times the flavor and quality of the food, because it's not even worth the convenience anymore for the crap food that you get from McDonald's. Not at that price. Not when you're paying the same damn price as you are at a sit-down restaurant. Damn near. Or if not more in some cases. Been there, done that.
attacks on you, your family, and have affecting also your wallets, of course.
Before we go, when we last spoke, you said that if Trump were to impose these sweeping tariffs, the U.S. and Canada would be in a trade war. And I wonder, are you in a trade war now?
Of course we are. We are. They've imposed executive orders against us. And that's why you've been hearing me using the term, Jim.
And you've been, like I've said earlier, in Canada, you've been sneakily assassinating us one by one for many years. It just hasn't been noticeable because you went the long game to suck our industry away from us. Trump's like, we ain't got time. President Trump is like, we don't have time because our country's going bankrupt because of helping your country and every other country in the frickin' world ahead of our own. It's time for us to say screw this, and you know, if it ruins some trade relations, it ruins some trade relations, but I guarantee you the US's economy is going to be, it might take a hit to start with, but I guarantee you in the long run it's going to be booming, and unfortunately for most other countries, without the US's assistance, you're going to be broke. From the way I understand everything. I'm not an economist or none of that shit, but that's just the way that's the way I'm reading it. That's the way I'm feeling it. And this is actually the way I've been thinking for 30 years. You know, long before this crap. So, you know, if the US can topple the world's economy in all reality, and it'd take them all of about 6 months to do it. It's all it would take us to do is 6 months to stop frickin' exporting anything or importing anything to anyone. And whose economy would still be thriving? I'm sure ours would. But 90% of the rest of the world, you'd be pretty well effed.
We didn't start this trade war. The US administration did. And they can reverse course. But they can only reverse course if the American people themselves say it's enough. That they want to make sure
yes,
that
it is enough. Enough
we
of
get to a good place
taking
and
our
we're
jobs.
able to ultimately get rid of these tariffs and also have a better relationship between Canada and the US. We've never seen this in decades. We were caught by surprise by this intention of launching this trade war, but we're a strong country. We're proud people. We're hardworking, and we always defend ourselves.
Caught by surprise by slowly assassinating, by slowly poisoning, I should say, the U.S., slowly killing us off, is what you've been doing. But you're surprised when somebody finally says, screw this, we ain't drinking your Kool-Aid no more. And I've got the antidote for it. Unfortunately, it's gonna sting you guys a lot harder than it's gonna sting us in the long run.
And we will continue to defend ourselves in the context of this trade war.
There you have it from the Canadian Foreign Minister. The U.S. and Canada, neighbors, treaty allies, now in a trade war.
Right there, you heard it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of haters. But just remember, these are my opinions, just like you guys have opinions. Tell me what you guys think. I'm going to listen to your opinions. But of course, you know, I'm kind of set in my ways. Give me actual valid proof to sway my opinion. Don't just, oh, you're stupid, you know, or you're an idiot. But I'm sure I'll get a lot of those too if I get any views on this video in the first place. But with that being said, thank you all for watching as long as you have, and come back and watch me for the next one. Have a great day.